The house was alive with the sound of family. Plates clattered in the kitchen, laughter spilled down the hallway, and the long oak dining table was covered in the kind of dishes that always brought everyone together: roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans tossed with almonds, fresh bread warm from the oven. Emma moved from one end of the room to the other, topping off glasses, smiling at her niece's jokes, and slipping her father an extra slice of pie when no one was looking. She loved nights like this. They filled the house with warmth, reminded her of the times when her husband was still alive, and laughter seemed endless. But behind her practiced smile, Emma carried a quiet ache she never admitted to anyone. Her son Ryan had been unusually quiet all evening. He sat near the end of the table, listening more than speaking, his brown eyes so much like his father's, watching everything around him. He chuckled at his cousin's stories, teased his aunt about her cooking, but Emma could tell something was on his mind. She knew him too well. After all, she had raised him alone for years. As the dinner came to an end, chairs scraped back and the crowd began gathering coats. There were hugs at the doorway, reminders about birthdays, promises to meet again soon. One by one, the cars pulled out of the driveway, leaving the house quieter with each departure. By the time Emma returned from waving at her parents' car, the once bustling home had grown still. The dishes in the sink were the only evidence of the big family gathering that had just filled the space with joy. Emma slipped off her apron, sighing softly. The silence wrapped around her like a heavy blanket. It was the same silence she faced every night, and most of the time she accepted it. But tonight felt different. Ryan hadn't gone upstairs yet. He was stretched out on the couch in the living room, one arm thrown over the back, his gaze following her as she moved into the kitchen. Emma began rinsing plates, stacking them carefully, her hands busy even though her mind had already started to wander. She hummed to herself, but the sound faded quickly, lost in the stillness of the house. "Mom." Emma froze, a plate in her hands, water rushing over her fingers. His tone wasn't casual. It wasn't the way he usually called her when he wanted to ask about homework or snacks. She set the plate down and turned toward him. "Yes, Ryan." He sat up straighter, his expression serious. The light from the lamp by the sofa cast shadows across his face, making him look older than his years. For a moment, Emma felt a pang of recognition, how much he resembled Mark at that age, how his steady gaze mirrored the man she had once loved so deeply. "Can we talk?" he asked. Emma dried her hands on the towel hanging from the oven door and walked into the living room. She sat across from him, folding the towel in her lap. "Of course," she said. "What's going on?" Ryan hesitated. He ran a hand through his hair, looking like he was trying to find the right words. Emma waited, her heart already tightening. Something about his silence made her nervous. Finally, he spoke. "You've been alone too long, Mom." The words hit her harder than she expected. For a second, she almost laughed, thinking it was just a strange comment from a teenager. But when she looked at his face, she saw no trace of humor. He was serious, completely serious. "I don't." She started, but her voice trailed off. She looked down at the towel, twisting it in her hands. "What do you mean?" Ryan leaned forward, his elbows on his knees. "I mean, you've given everything to me since Dad passed away. You've worked so hard. You've been both mom and dad. You've been amazing. But," his voice softened, "I see you when everyone leaves. You're lonely, Mom." Emma blinked, her breath catching. She wanted to deny it, to tell him he was imagining things. But she couldn't. He was right. She did sit on the porch alone most nights, staring into the dark with thoughts she never said out loud. She did make dinners that were too big, forgetting she no longer had a husband to eat the second serving. She did smile at family gatherings, then feel the crushing weight of silence once the laughter was gone. "Ryan," she whispered, her voice trembling, "you shouldn't worry about me. You're still young. You don't have to." "I do worry," he interrupted gently, "because you're my mom, and I don't want you to spend your whole life just taking care of me. You deserve someone who takes care of you, too." The towel slipped from her fingers. She stared at him, stunned by the maturity in his words. He was only 17, Yet he spoke with a kind of wisdom that made her feel as though the roles had reversed. He was the one protecting her now. Her heart ached as she looked at him. He had been so strong after his father's death. He had never complained when she worked late, never resented the sacrifices, never asked for more than she could give. And here he was, thinking not about himself, but about her happiness. "Why are you saying this now?" she asked quietly. He took a deep breath, his eyes steady on hers. "Because tonight I realized everyone has someone. Aunt Claire has Uncle James, Grandpa still has Grandma. Even my cousins were talking about their boyfriends and girlfriends. And then I looked at you. You were smiling, but I could tell you were faking it, at least a little. I don't want you to fake it anymore." Emma's chest tightened, her emotions swirling. She wanted to be strong, to tell him she was fine, that her life was complete with just him. But the truth pressed in on her. She wasn't fine. She was lonely. She had locked away her heart, convinced herself it was safer that way. But hearing her son's words made her realize how heavy that lock had become. Before she could answer, the old grandfather clock in the hallway began to chime. Its deep, rhythmic sound filled the quiet house. Ryan stood slowly, stretching his arms. His serious expression softened, replaced with a small smile. "I'm heading to bed," he said. Emma opened her mouth, wanting to call him back, wanting to explain, but no words came. She could only nod. "Just think about it," he added. Giving her one last look before disappearing up the stairs, Emma sat in the living room long after he was gone. The lamp casts a warm glow, but it couldn't ease the weight of her thoughts. Her son's words echoed in her mind, louder than the ticking of the clock, louder than the silence of the empty house. "You've been alone too long." Emma leaned back in her chair, her eyes glistening. For years, she had convinced herself her story was finished, that love belonged to the past. But now, a small voice inside her whispered something she hadn't let herself believe in a long time. Maybe, just maybe, her story wasn't over. The morning after the family dinner, sunlight streamed into Emma's kitchen, painting golden stripes across the tiled floor. She stood at the counter with a cup of coffee, staring out the window. Normally, mornings brought her peace, but today she felt restless. Ryan's words from the night before echoed in her mind, refusing to fade. "You've been alone too long." She tried to brush it off, telling herself he was just being thoughtful, maybe even dramatic. But deep down, she knew his words had pierced through walls she had built for years. She couldn't shake the way he had looked at her, so serious, so sincere. It was the look of someone who truly cared. Ryan shuffled into the kitchen, his hair messy, still in his pajamas. "Morning, Mom," he said, grabbing a bowl for cereal. His tone was casual, but Emma's chest tightened with the memory of what he had said the night before. She forced a smile. "Morning," she replied softly. She wanted to ask him more, but the timing felt wrong. So she stayed quiet, watching him pour milk and eat quickly before heading upstairs again. She let out a long breath, realizing she needed space to think. Later that day, Emma decided to get out of the house. She drove to the small park downtown, the one where she and Mark used to take Ryan when he was a little boy. The benches were still the same, old wood painted green, weathered from years of sun and rain. She sat down and watched families walk by, children chasing each other, couples strolling hand in hand. A pang of longing hit her unexpectedly. She hadn't thought about romance in years. She had convinced herself she didn't need it anymore. But Ryan was right. Watching those couples, she realized something was missing. It wasn't just about loneliness, it was about connection, about sharing her life with someone who understood her. She sighed, resting her chin in her hand. The thought scared her. Opening her heart again meant risking pain. She wasn't sure she was ready. That evening, as she cooked dinner, Ryan joined her in the kitchen. He leaned against the counter, watching her chop vegetables. "You've been quiet today," he said. Emma set down the knife, glancing at him. "I've been thinking," she admitted. "About what I said?" he asked gently. She nodded, her eyes on the cutting board. "Yes, you caught me off guard last night." Ryan didn't look away. "I meant it, Mom. I don't want you to be alone forever." Dad wouldn't want that either. Her chest ached at the mention of Mark. It had been almost 10 years since he passed. But his memory was still sharp, still tender. She pressed her lips together, fighting back the wave of grief. "It's not easy," she whispered, letting someone new in. "It feels like betraying him." Ryan stepped closer, his voice steady. "It's not betrayal. Dad loved you. He would want you to be happy again, don't you think?" Emma turned to look at her son. His sincerity nearly undid her. She saw both the boy she raised and the man he was becoming. She realized then that his words weren't just about her, they were about him too. He wanted to see her whole, not broken. "I'm scared," she confessed, her voice breaking. "Scared of being hurt. Scared it won't work. Scared of opening my heart again." Ryan placed a hand on her shoulder, surprising her. "Being scared doesn't mean you shouldn't try. You taught me that." Emma blinked rapidly, overwhelmed. He was right again. She had always told him to face challenges, to take chances, to believe in himself. Now he was turning her own advice back on her. Dinner that night was quiet, but it wasn't the heavy silence of before. It was thoughtful, filled with unspoken emotions. When Ryan finally went upstairs, Emma sat alone at the table. She thought about Mark, about the years she had given to raising her son, about the woman she used to be before grief consumed her. And for the first time in years, she wondered what it might feel like to hope again. The following week, Emma accepted an invitation from her friend Lisa to join a book club at the local library. Normally, she would have declined, claiming she was too busy or too tired. But this time, Ryan's words pushed her to say yes. On Thursday evening, she walked into the library's meeting room, nerves fluttering in her stomach. The group was small, just 7 people sitting in a circle with coffee and cookies. They welcomed her warmly. And then she noticed one of them in David. He was in his early 50s, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. He spoke about the book with passion, but what struck Emma most was his laugh. It was warm, genuine, the kind of sound that filled a room. Emma felt something stir inside her. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't sudden, but it was real. She hadn't felt that spark in years. She listened to him, adding her own thoughts here and there. And for the first time in a long time, she felt seen, not just as a mother, but as a woman. When the meeting ended, David caught up with her as she was leaving. "First time here?" he asked, smiling. "Yes," Emma replied, feeling her cheeks warm. "Well, I'm glad you came. Hope to see you again next week." She nodded, her heart beating faster than it should. On the drive home, she couldn't stop thinking about the way he had looked at her, not with pity, not with familiarity, but with genuine interest. That night, Ryan was waiting on the couch when she walked in. "How was it?" he asked. Emma hesitated, then smiled softly. "It was nice." Ryan's eyes lit up, as though he already knew. "See, Mom? You just needed to take the first step." Emma laughed quietly, shaking her head. "You're too wise for your age. You know that?" He grinned. "Maybe, or maybe I just want to see you happy." Emma sat down beside him, resting her head lightly on his shoulder. She realized then that this journey wasn't just about her, it was about both of them. They had been through loss together, carried each other through the darkest days, and now maybe they could both find light again. Still, as she lay in bed later that night, Emma's mind swirled. She wasn't sure where things with David would go, or if she was even ready. But for the first time in years, the silence in her heart didn't feel empty, it felt open. And deep down, she knew Ryan was right. The story of her life wasn't finished, yet Emma woke earlier than usual on Saturday. The morning sun streamed through her curtains, and for the first time in years, she didn't dread the day. Instead, there was a nervous excitement buzzing inside her. The book club had awakened something she thought was gone forever. She kept thinking about David, the way his eyes had crinkled when he laughed. The gentle way he had spoken to her as though her opinion mattered. She told herself it was nothing, that she was only curious, but her reflection in the mirror gave her away. She found herself carefully fixing her hair before going downstairs. She hadn't cared about such details in so long. But today she wanted to feel alive again. Ryan was already in the kitchen, pouring himself a cup of coffee. He looked up at her and smiled knowingly. "You're glowing this morning." Emma rolled her eyes, but couldn't hide her blush. Don't start, Ryan. Not starting anything, he said, grinning. I'm just saying it's nice to see you happy. She shook her head, pretending to focus on making breakfast, but her heart swelled. Ryan wasn't just her son, he was her greatest supporter. Without him, she would still be hiding behind grief. That afternoon, Emma received a message from Lisa, reminding her about next week's book club. She almost typed a quick "Yes, I'll come," but hesitated. Then she thought of Ryan's words, of the laughter in that library room, of the way David had said, "Hope to see you again." Slowly, she typed, looking forward to it. The days passed quickly. Emma kept herself busy with work and errands, but her mind often drifted to Thursday. She caught herself wondering what she would wear. She'd get another chance to talk to David. At night, she lay in bed thinking about how different she felt. For years, she had been surviving, but now she was beginning to live. When Thursday came, Emma walked into the library with her heart racing. She wore a soft blue sweater that Ryan said brought out her eyes. The group welcomed her back warmly, and soon they were all deep in discussion. David sat across from her this time, and though they didn't speak much directly, she noticed his glances, the small smiles he sent her way. It was enough to make her cheeks warm. After the meeting, as people were leaving, David approached her again. "Emma, do you have a minute?" Her pulse quickened. "Of course." He held up his phone almost shyly. "I was wondering if you'd like to grab coffee sometime. Nothing formal, just conversation." Emma's breath caught. She hadn't been asked on a date in over a decade. A part of her wanted to say no, to retreat back into her safe shell. But another part, the stronger part, whispered that this was the chance Ryan had urged her to take. "I'd like that," she said softly. David's smile widened. "Great. How about Saturday afternoon?" She nodded, still trying to calm the fluttering in her chest. "Saturday works." On the drive home, Emma could hardly believe what had just happened. She gripped the steering wheel tightly, her mind racing. She was nervous, yes, but beneath it was something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. Ryan was waiting on the couch when she got home. "You're late," he teased. Emma hesitated before sitting beside him. "I might have made plans." Ryan's eyebrows shot up. "With David." Emma blinked. "How did you?" "I'm not blind, Mom," he said, chuckling. "I saw the way he looked at you last week." Emma's cheeks flushed. "It's just coffee." "Coffee can turn into something more," Ryan said softly. Then, with a grin, "And honestly, I think it's about time." That night, Emma barely slept. She thought about what to wear, what to say, how to act. It felt almost silly, like she was a teenager again, but beneath the nerves was excitement she couldn't deny. Saturday arrived. And Emma stood in front of her closet, heart pounding. She finally chose a simple dress with a cardigan. Not too fancy, but not too casual either. When she walked downstairs, Ryan gave her a thumbs up. "Perfect." "He won't know what hit him, Ryan," she said warningly, but couldn't help laughing at the cafe. David was already waiting, a coffee in hand. He stood when he saw her, his smile easy and genuine. "Emma," he said warmly. They ordered drinks and found a quiet corner. At first, conversation was light: books, movies, little stories from their lives. But slowly it deepened. David told her about his work as an architect, about his daughter who lived out of state. Emma shared stories about Ryan, about her own career, about the challenges of raising a son alone after losing Mark. There were moments of silence. But they weren't uncomfortable. They felt natural, like pauses in music. Emma found herself laughing more than she had in years, her shoulders relaxing as though she had been holding her breath for a decade. 2 hours passed before they even realized it. As they stepped outside, David hesitated. "I hope this wasn't too forward," he said, "but I really enjoyed today." Emma smiled, her heart warm. "So did I." He gave a small nod, almost relieved. "Would you like to do this again sometime?" She didn't hesitate this time. "Yes, I would." Driving home, Emma felt lighter than she had in years. When she walked through the door, Ryan was waiting, arms crossed dramatically. So Emma laughed, shaking her head. It was wonderful. Ryan grinned, pulling her into a quick hug. "I'm proud of you, Mom." Her eyes grew misty as she hugged him back. "I wouldn't have done this without you." That night, Emma sat in her room, staring out at the stars. For the first time since Mark's passing, the world didn't feel so heavy. She wasn't sure what would happen with David, but she knew one thing for certain. Her life was no longer standing still. And somewhere deep inside, she realized Ryan had given her the greatest gift, not just encouragement, but the permission to dream again, still. As she lay down to sleep, one question lingered in her heart. Was she truly ready for a new love, or was she stepping into something that might break her all over again? The answer would come in time, but for now, Emma allowed herself to feel hope. The weeks that followed Emma's coffee with David were filled with quiet change. At first, she told herself it was just a friendship, two people sharing time together. But with every conversation, every smile, every walk they took through the park after book club, Emma felt the invisible walls around her heart begin to soften. Ryan noticed it before she did. He saw the way she hummed to herself while cooking, how she lingered a little longer in front of the mirror before leaving the house, and how her laughter came easier now. He never teased her cruelly, just gave her small nudges. The kind of support only a son who loved her deeply could give. One evening, Emma sat on the porch swing, watching the sunset paint the sky in soft shades of orange and pink. David had dropped her off just minutes before after another long talk over coffee. Her chest was full, hopeful, terrified, excited. Ryan joined her on the swing, sipping a soda. "You're different these days," he said simply. Emma turned to him, smiling faintly. "Is that a good thing?" "The best," Ryan said. "You deserve this, Mom." Tears pricked her eyes, and she reached over, squeezing his hand. She realized then that her son hadn't just pushed her to find someone new. He had given her permission to be more than just his mother, more than just a widow. He wanted her whole again. But as much as Emma wanted to embrace this new chapter, there was a fear she couldn't shake. One night, after David walked her to her door, she lingered on the porch instead of going inside. He sensed her hesitation. "Emma," he said softly, "can I ask what's on your mind?" She swallowed hard. "It's been a long time since I let anyone in. Mark, losing him nearly broke me. I keep wondering if opening my heart again means I'll just lose everything all over." David's eyes softened, his voice steady. "I can't promise life won't hurt again, but I can promise this: I'll treat your heart with care. I'll walk at your pace. And if all we ever have is friendship, I'll be grateful for that too." Emma blinked rapidly, overwhelmed by his honesty. There was no pressure in his words, only understanding. She nodded, whispering, "Thank you." That night, lying in bed, Emma felt something shift. David wasn't asking her to replace Mark or to forget the past. He was asking her to live again, to allow herself joy without guilt. For the first time, that didn't feel like betrayal, it felt like healing. Over the next few months, their bond deepened. They went to farmers markets, shared stories of their childhoods, and even cooked dinner together once at her house. Ryan joined them, joking with David, testing him the way only a protective son could. To Emma's relief, David passed every test with patience, with humor, with kindness. One evening after Ryan had gone to bed, Emma and David lingered in the kitchen finishing a pot of tea. The house was quiet except for the ticking of the clock. Emma looked at him, her heart pounding, and whispered, "I never thought I'd feel this way again." David reached for her hand, his thumb brushing gently across her knuckles. "Neither did I," he said. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't rushed. But in that moment, Emma knew this was the beginning of something real. Weeks turned into months, and Emma's world grew brighter. She still carried Mark's memory, but it no longer felt like a heavy weight. Instead, it felt like a light guiding her forward. She realized that loving again didn't erase the past, it honored it, showing that she had survived and chosen to live fully. One late summer evening, the three of them, Mama, Ryan, and David, sat on the porch after dinner. Fireflies danced across the yard, and the air was warm with the scent of blooming flowers. Ryan leaned back in his chair, watching his mom laugh at one of David's stories. Finally, he said with a grin, "See, Mom? I told you. You just needed to take the first step." Emma turned to him, her eyes shimmering in the golden light. She reached out, pulling her son close. "You were right," she whispered. "You've given me back more than you know." Ryan smiled, hugging her back. He didn't say anything more. He didn't need to. His heart was full, knowing his mother was no longer walking through life alone. As the evening drew on, Emma looked around at the two most important people in her life, her son and this new man, who had gently stepped into their world. She realized she was standing at the edge of a future she hadn't dared to imagine, one filled with hope, laughter, and maybe even love again. She thought back to that night after the family dinner, when Ryan had first spoken those bold, unexpected words, "You've been alone too long." At the time, they had unsettled her. Now, they felt like a turning point the moment her life began again. For years, Emma had believed her story was finished, that her best days were behind her. But as fireflies glowed in the dusk and laughter filled the porch, she finally understood. Her story was still being written. And this time, she wasn't writing it alone.